I just was talking about vegan supremacy. Then I started looking up stuff. I thought, wonder if there's anybody else claiming to be a vegan supremacist. And I didn't see any, but they're saying about how vegans think they're more they're supreme than everybody else. And I'm no different than anybody else, but I will say that my decision that I made to go vegan is, I'm not going to say higher morality, but I think I have a higher nah, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I wake up with less guilt, and my life is I'm less guilty, and the longer I am one, the better I feel about being vegan from the guilt side of not killing something like a. Well, I go off the Black Sabbath song where killing yourself to live. Basically, animals, as far as I'm concerned, animals made us. The thought. I mean, we wouldn't have flesh and all our organs if it wasn't for animals. I mean, you can take evolution. You can take yeah, evolution, as far as I'm concerned, is a extension of uh, religion, where it's like an evolved religion. So basically, it's saying, I mean, look at Big Bang and what the Christianity took 7 days to, 7 days and made the universe and everything in it. That's almost a Big Bang, wouldn't you say? And it's basically parallel. They almost parallel everything. They just a different way of saying it. So it's like they're extremists, religious fanatics that don't claim religion because of how who claiming that it was made by somebody that gives somebody a superiority complex. But anyway, so I looked up vegan supremacy and I didn't see anybody in it, but I looked at this article and this lady talking about how blacks. There's a lot of stuff on how there's white people think that only white people can be vegan, or now that's not true, but where it leaves me is my belief is people in this solar system have lived on other planets. I mean, they'll live on a planet. It's not. There's maybe like two or three other planets that they like Jupiter and Saturn. Both are destroyed. You can't live there anymore. So you basically look at it and say, well, okay, it's uninhabitable. So possibility that humans didn't live there. I mean, humans live there. You think of it now, you think, well, we can't live there. But if you think how destructive we are, you think how the end product would destroy the planet. You just have to look at the planets and go, okay, well, those planets are destroyed. And there's a lot of people talking heavy and people talking see the light. And I believe it was real light on Saturn, which that's caused its demise. There's too much light and it dehydrated and everything dried up. And that's how they died there. And then Jupiter, I don't know. Maybe they just tried. Maybe they was just pulling in. I don't know what happened there. I think it was a mud hole. But anyway, as far as I'm concerned, that's where meat eating. There was fish eaters on. It's just an evolved process. Meat eating is an evolved process from one planet to the other. It's like Neptune or something like that. They was going crazy there because there was a bunch of people. What they had done is the society evolved to where they got, I don't know if they got bored. If you think of people living on this planet, you think of ages or eras that we live in. Like now we're living in I don't know what this is, the industrial age. I guess we could be probably, I don't know if we're really computer because we're still industrialized. It's just computer operated. So we're still in the industrial age, instead of instead of the bronze or stone or whatever. But that's a bigger than an era. So you could say that's the same with if you lived on Jupiter, if you lived on Saturn, or if you lived on Uranus or Neptune or whatever, one of those planets. Or Neptune, they might have been eating, uh, what do they call them, winter berries. So I think Neptune would have been a cold planet. Hit the sun. Anyway. And then after Neptune, they died on Neptune maybe from got too cold. Maybe the sun started shrinking, they got too cold and died. So anyway, go to the next planet. They were, or was it Neptune, and then uh, what is it? Neptune and Uranus, and that's where they started eating bugs because they went crazy with all these. They had beeps. They went off of sounds that caused them, like they was like industrial, but they had everything they did. They evolved to a place where, how music is now, where a lot of people have to have music in the environment. Like it used to not be. You used to go to a place like a mall or something like that, and they didn't play music. They play music in the elevator, and it's evolved over the last 60 years that they play music everywhere you go. It doesn't matter where you go, you're going to have to listen to music, whether you like it or not. It's kind of annoying. I mean, it was kind of neat having music, right, like rock music played. You'd start going into places, as a kid, and it was like, oh, they're playing rock music here. Okay, cool. But now it's just like classical music, and there's one thing I hate is classical music. And every time I go in there, it's just almost nauseating to walk into these places. And it's like listening to classic music radio station. They play this, there's like 10 songs they play. And they play them over and over and over. It's like, oh my God, how can you play this stuff? Why would somebody, it's almost like you're trying to program my brain. So that's what they was doing on Uranus. Is they got to a point, I don't know how they got to a point, but they got to a point where they was just using sounds like beeps and boops to control their movement. They'd found the way to, maybe the sounds that were in their brain that caused, maybe the sounds of neurons sparking, and they found that sound, they magnified it and amplified it, and now every time they could control people by those beeps and boops. Well, anyway, people were working and they were starting to, they started to, I don't know if it was just automatically they would start breaking out of the realization that they were being controlled by these sounds, whether it was science or government that caused them to to say we're going to control the people's sounds and they'll just do what we want. And so they were a bunch of freaking robots, basically. They were biological robots on Uranus, and so they were going around just controlled by the beeps and boops that science had found and government used to control people. So then people, the normal people started, whether it was through, I don't know, realization, or they just went crazy and they realized they were being controlled by all these beeps. Well, they went crazy. They were turned into crazy. There was one guy who started eating a bug, and that caused, I don't know if that caused, because it was something that they wasn't supposed to do. They had been programmed, all these things that they didn't want people to do. Well, I don't know, bug eating was one of the things. It's just, you go through, I'm not going to go through the whole story of what caused it. I mean, you could write maybe I should write a book just on, what a nonfiction book. Of course, how do you prove? I mean, you can't say that it didn't happen, because if thought existed continually and that all the people died on Uranus, that thought would go to, if you're in the same solar system, you could probably pick, I mean, being the animals are there, and then each place animals have to, they basically, plants evolve and then animals are born, and when the brain is formed and they start to think, they start to be able to use it, realize with it, then they make their own. And what they do is they're just going back through the same history as what was before them, because they're just catching. That's basically what they're doing, is catching what was before them. So they're just remaking. And if there's anything added to it, say normal humans were just walking around on Neptune eating winterberries. Okay, they're eating these little white berries on Neptune. So then when Uranus is formed, they're not thinking that they're getting the thought of Neptune. They're just doing stuff, and then it evolves from that thought. And so the winter berries could have been, uh, maybe the darkness, the sun shrinking, getting colder, and it caused the winter berries to, you know, how twilight gets, where everything kind of starts. It's almost like a hallucination. You can look at something, you have to look at mirages. I won't say hallucination, more like a mirage, where it can conform into other shapes and stuff. So anyway, so they're looking at these winter berries on Neptune, and it's getting darker. Over time it's getting darker, but it's like dusk, and it's going to cause the winter berries. It's getting darker, so they're going to look at these winter berries and see that it's looking more like a bug, or they're not thinking bugs. They're just thinking, it's getting dark and it's hard to see them. So anyway, so that thought that it's hard to see. So anyway, that thought goes, floats in billions of years, and then people on Uranus are born. They go through all this evolution of creating sounds and stuff. And so people rebel against the system, and they start eating bugs, which they just got it from eating winterberries on. It's just they wasn't really thinking that, or they might have been thinking, well, this is against the government. So if their protest caused them to start eating, protest of control, the protest of freedom, caused them to start eating bugs. And then, okay, so on that planet they ate bugs. Whether it was just, it was like a taboo thing where not everybody did it, but they did it. There was groups of people that did it. Okay, so then it formed into say that everything died on Uranus. Everything died on Neptune. Then they was born on Uranus. Not them necessarily, but the whatever formed them and the thought. And then it could be people that lived on Neptune, and then the same kind of people were formed on Uranus and might have had thoughts, wow, I wonder if we have ever lived on another planet. Anyway, so then they're going to Saturn, and they start eating fish, because they can't really hear they don't really connect with fish, because they are isolated by the water. So somehow it evolves, just like Uranus, where they evolved into going crazy and they start eating bugs. Well, whatever happened, they started eating fish on Saturn. Okay, so everybody dies on Saturn, and then all the thought is still floating billions and billions of years, and Jupiter starts to have life on it, and it goes through everything until people are eating. There's a dark side of Jupiter, which is dark all the time, and it spins. It's like the North Pole is pointed at the sun, Jupiter. It was not necessarily now, but it was at the time. And so the dark side of Jupiter would have faced always away from the sun. So it was like a light side and a dark side, and it was always light on one side, but not necessarily. It wouldn't be like, I don't think it'd been like Earth's light. Yeah, or maybe the sun shrank enough, like on Saturn. If they dehydrated, maybe the sun went through a fluctuation where it went through a bunch of flares, and it caused to be more brighter on Saturn than it was on Jupiter, because the sun was starting to shrink when people were on Jupiter. So it would have been darker, so the light wouldn't have been just 24 hours a day of light. this plants would still grow because it wouldn't have been an intense light that had killed them. So it was just the right amount of light to uh, for life. But on the dark side, people would be there was, I don't know, people were either outlaws and they went to the dark side or whatever it was, to the dark side of Jupiter, and they was eating. They started killing and eating meat on Jupiter. So when you think of calling the dark side, and basically religion stems, I believe, from uh, the thought that they're getting of stuff that happened on Jupiter. Only they're not thinking it happened. They're not thinking, well, this happened on Jupiter. They're just getting the thought, and they're thinking, they're getting, oh, this is horrible, and these people are doing this because, and they don't. A lot of people don't realize, what the first thought is or why people do it, and it's just a translated thought that they get, but they don't actually know. They only relate it to what's on Earth. They don't think of, well, it could be a past thought from Jupiter. It could be past thought from ages, from Middle Age. It could be a past thought from prehistoric times. Anyway, when animals made humans, because it was a combined thought, if you think about it, thought before humans was in animals. So animals were doing all the thinking. And their thought evolved to creating something close to the human form. I mean, they might have made monkeys, then apes, and then, gorillas might have been the last, whatever way. And then they started, and what it was they was evolving as a thought form. They might not even realize that each other's was thinking, maybe herds did, but they might not have realized that all the animals were thinking this. So anyway, so you got animals giving birth to some sort of subhuman, not necessarily subhuman, maybe what are they saying? The first humans were hominids, but they're saying hominids were almost like a monkey. So I'm saying hominids were maybe hairy, but they weren't apes. They weren't apes. They weren't monkeys. They weren't gorillas. They were whatever animal might not have been thinking was forced to, was forced to give birth to the first humans. So these first humans were born, and that is what and the animals, remembering that they were being, the thought was being that they were being slaughtered, or it might have just been an evolved thought that they were just giving birth, because who knows how animals gave birth to humans on each planet. But if the first thought they got is that animals were being murdered by people on the dark side, they wouldn't have seen what color. They wouldn't have seen a race or anything. They would have just seen that they were dark. So that's the reason, as far as I'm concerned, why people are black. There's black people, and that's because the animals formed them from maybe from the eating of meat or something, whatever. But that's what I'm thinking, that there's a difference between white and black, as blacks are only black because the dark side of Jupiter, and that's the reason they're black. It might be there might be some physiological reason that cause them to be black, but what I'm saying, or not, is how they became black, not how they became. See, it's all, you say all this stuff and you think, well, that's the reason they're black. No, I'm thinking it's animals thought, remembering that they were murdered, and it was from the dark side. So it was just, that's why people are black, is because they were. It was the animals. Now, the people that are black aren't necessarily supposed to be meat eaters, but that's what that's what the formation of animals, as far as I'm concerned, that's the reason that people are black, is because they eat meat. On There was meat eaters on Jupiter on the dark side, and so that's the reason that it's just. And then white were, maybe it was Saturn. They were eating whatever fish or whatever, and so now the aspect of only whites can, this article I was reading is some black women were saying they read something where uh, white supremacy or whatever it is gone to the point where only whites can be vegan, or people are just taking it that only whites can be vegan. But you look on YouTube, and there's a lot of black vegan. I mean, look at India. Of course, I think they're more vegetarian. I think India's more vegetarian. There are vegans, and but if you look at Rastafarians, they're supposedly, if the true Rastafarian is supposed to be vegan. I guess it's a choice or something like that. But anyway, so when I was saying I was a vegan supremacist, doesn't mean that I'm claiming that because I'm white. I'm not claiming white supremacy. I'm claiming vegan supremacy, which is you choose to eat meat and you choose to breed. Because breeding, you can't control what your lineage is going to. When you breed, you raise your kids. Okay, I'm raising them right, and they're vegan or whatever. But if you're a vegan and you breed, and your kids, and you try to instill in them to be vegans, and then they breed and their kids breed, and it goes on and on and on. 200-300 years from now, are all the lineage of each one of those are going to be vegan? You can't guarantee that. So you're taking a chance. It's like just like having kids. You're taking a chance your kid's going to be healthy and be able to realize and all that stuff. Their brain's going to be fine. So it's a gamble. I mean, I'm not going to take a gamble with life. I'm not going to say, oh, maybe my kids won't be crippled. Maybe my kids won't be mentally challenged or anything like that. So I'm thought, no, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to. It's too big a gamble, and you're just saying, well, maybe that won't happen. I'm not going to do that. A lot of people, that's what it's like. Yeah, well, that's why I'm claiming that you shouldn't be breeding, because you can't claim that your lineage is going to be a vegan down the line, and you can't claim at the beginning, just at first thought that they're going to, when you have a kid, you can't be sure that they're going to be, I'd want my kids to be healthy in every aspect. But another thing I wouldn't want them is coming to this planet and having to waste their life, having to do something to exist, you know, uh, whether it's popularity, because I believe trying to get into popularity. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm not saying vegan supremacy on white supremacy. I'm just saying vegan as in vegan supremacy, meaning that I don't do anything, not that animals do, but I don't use them in any way. So I'm not going to breed, and I'm not going to eat or wear them. If I can, if I eat something and there's something in there, because when I started turning vegan, it was like, okay, I'm vegan now, and then they read something where it's last thing I think I read was white sugar. They use bone char to make sugar white. I was like, why would they use bone? I guess they're using other stuff, but they don't put on the package whether they use bone char or not to make sugar white, so you don't know. So they basically say, well, it's an if between eating white sugar, whether if you want to be a pure vegan. Well, I'm just trying to not have animals killed for my existence, being this they made me. And as far as I'm concerned, I claim they're God only in the sense that people claim that religion, and they put man, they just automatically man is God, and man is a freaking mess They look at all the trouble they cause. Look at everything they do is a mess up, and then they just put that imagery. They're saying man is the image of a god. And I'm saying no. I'm saying I'm not even into the Jewish, because all the religions basically were created by some Jewish person. I don't know if they're trying to evolve Judaism through other religions and thinking, well, I'm going to evolve this, I'm going to evolve Judaism and get, and say this is the religion. Well, they all say no and whatever. So I'm just saying that animals are God in the sense that they created humans, not some floating imagery in space. Unless, but you can interpret it that the floating person in space was somebody on another planet. And the thought comes from the planet, like the thought came from Jupiter, but it wasn't necessarily from Jupiter, because Saturn, you got all these other planets that had thought, and it evolved on this planet. And then, so you can't just even eat all the, well, just to explain something, you gotta go to the point of ridiculousness, because I guess I'm just gonna have to just finish with I'm a vegan supremacist, but doesn't necessarily mean I'm not saying it because I'm white and a white vegan supremacist. I'm just saying vegan is supreme over it being better than meat eaters, which people say, well, animals eat meat. Well, that could be that they evolved. Maybe they didn't eat meat until people started eating bugs. Maybe bugs were just stuff that crawled around, and who knows, ate garbage. Maybe they were just garbage eating bugs, and nobody ate meat, and so they just eat garbage. And then the people started eating bugs, and there was so many bugs eaten that it formed a thought of it's okay to eat. And so, whether fish were on these other planets, and then when humans started eating, anyway, that's the reason animals have horns and fangs and all that stuff, is from the thought process of evolving, of meat eating by humans. So everything bad has been created by humans. So I don't know why they could call God a human form. So anyway, I know it's you'd need a book on this. You'd need like 4 different books to explain that, but then you'd have to cross reference each one of them. So it's kind of hard to cross reference. You'd need like a 3 or 4D platform, like a chess platform, to say, well, okay, this is happening because this, and then this is happening, and then these are